Good morning, I'm Dave Christie with your LaRouche Organization update for Wednesday, July 23rd. I'll be filling in for Harley Schlanger today. He'll be back with you tomorrow. Now, I'm going to focus on the urgent need to end the so-called special relationship. That is the intelligence sharing and, well, in short, that is the British using the United States as the brawn for their, run by their brains, their scrambled brains for the British geopolitical operations. And by the United Kingdom and that special relationship that we have with the United Kingdom, I do mean the City of London financial oligarchy, who of course has their lackeys in Wall Street, getting us to do that bidding here. I'm going to take up two aspects of this special relationship. One is a report on whether or not there have been U.S. nuclear weapons transferred to England, to an air base in England, which is likely the so-called mini nukes, the B-61s that have yields that could be 3 or 4 times as great as those dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but nonetheless, they call them mini nukes, which has dangerous implications given the desperation by the British, perhaps dreams of a first strike or so on. So these reports have not been confirmed by either the Department of Defense or the UK's Ministry of Defense, but there are reports indicating that perhaps that has occurred, first time since 2008 apparently. Now, the other aspect is what Donald Trump said yesterday at his meeting in the Oval Office with the president of the Philippines, where he referred to the recent, in the context of the recent DNI release that we saw, that Tulsi Gabbard released from the Department of, as Director of National Intelligence. And those, of course, concern the role of Obama and others of the John Brennan, Clapper, etc., who were involved in the Russiagate operation. Now, what Trump said of that yesterday is that Obama is effectively guilty of treason. I'll actually just read what he said. President Obama started it. Biden was there, Comey was there, and Clapper, the whole gang, Brennan, all there in this room, referring to the Oval Office. They have them stone cold. The leader of this gang was Barack Hussein Obama. He's guilty. This was treason, and went on to talk about how they stole the election, obfuscate the election, so on and so forth, and then called on the Department of Justice to act. Now, Obama actually issued a response to this, through a spokesperson saying that, our office does not normally dignify the constant nonsense coming from the president, so on and so forth. These bizarre allegations are ridiculous and a weak attempt at distraction. Now, there is a lot of freak out around this from the Democrat side of the Uniparty. You had Jim Himes claiming that there will never be any sort of prosecution or will never be brought to trial because it's so baseless and so on and so forth, and that you'll never get a judge to even bring it forward. However, Tulsi responded to Jim Himes basically saying, we've got more whistleblowers stepping forward. Now, the point on this is the LaRouche organization, organizers with Lynn and LaRouche, have spent years trying to impeach Obama. And so there would be no tears shed if he landed in jail. Probably champagne would be, the corks would be popped if Brennan, Comey, and Clapper et al., were sharing a cell with him. But the deeper issue on this is that if we do not end the special relationship, and in particular, that this coup that is being discussed, or the alleged coup at this point, although the evidence so far seems to point strongly in that direction. But the point is, this coup is made in London. And it was designed to ensure that the war plans that were drafted in terms of the proxy, what we now see in the proxy war in Ukraine, that would not be derailed. That began in the Obama administration with the support for the 2014 coup d'etat, the so-called Maidan, Euromaidan operation. And it was to ensure that Donald Trump did not follow through on campaign promises, not only to end the forever wars, but to restore decent relations with Russia, and similar statements that he made concerning China. Because doing that, ending the geopolitical escapades of the British in West Asia and globally, Ukraine, etc., as well as restoring relations with Russia and China, would mean the effective end of the special relationship. This idea that we're just going to be the British lapdogs for their geopolitical games designed from the City of London to maintain their financial power. Now, I think just one point on this is there has been a constant theme from the British on the question of Trump's presidencies potentially ending this special relationship. One was I think an important release in 2017 from the House of Lords. They put out a report called The UK Foreign Policy in a Shifting World. And I want to read something from one of the witnesses of this report, Lord Ricketts, who talked about the question of the relationship with the United States changing with Trump. Again, this is 2017, just after the election. Anyway, Ricketts refers to our strategic partnership with the U.S. right across the defense area, including the very important area of nuclear and intelligence relationship. He said that these were absolutely vital pillars of national security, and said that it should not be affected by the President Trump, and it very important that it should not be. So there was already this freak out. Now, on that specific point in the House of Lords report, it is said that none other than Robert Hannigan made a similar point. Now, Robert Hannigan was also a correspondent or a witness to this House of Lords grouping that put this report together. And I want to take a minute to focus on Hannigan, who is the former director of GCHQ. That's the NSA equivalent. And frankly, the NSA GCHQ nearly seamless intelligence sharing forms the backbone of the special relationship. And as Ricketts and Hannigan made the point in the House of Lords, the intelligence sharing is key to that. That's also the GCHQ NSA form also the backbone of the Five Eyes, the broader Commonwealth nations that the Anglo, American imperial structure, intelligence sharing operation. Now, given the emphasis that the release by the DNI Tulsi Gabbard, the emphasis on cyber, I'm focusing on Hannigan here in this report. Obviously, we had the case of Christopher Steele. He, got his orders from the former head of MI6, Richard Dearlove, where they sat in winged chairs at the Barrack or the Garrick Club, whatever the hell it was, in London, and where Dearlove basically gave Steele his marching orders, and we had the urine-laden compromat, dossier that he put together. There was also the case of the former UK ambassador to the US, Sir Tim Derrick, who eventually had to resign, given that he was organizing a coup after Trump was in there, trying to get him to go to war with Iran, flooding the zone, as they called it, finding all the neocons that would pressure Trump to launch a war against Iran in his first presidency, knowing that would sink his support from the base who wanted to end the forever wars, but it would also be a key component of British geopolitical aims in West Asia. So again, back to Hannigan, he was reporting as a witness to this House of Lords grouping, after he had left GCHQ in a firestorm. This was about 3 days after Donald Trump was elected for his first term. So January 2017, Hannigan leaves GCHQ because there had been questions of whether GCHQ had provided an intelligence bypass to the NSA. Judge Napolitano on Fox at the time had said that this was done so that there would be no American fingerprints on this. This refers to all the surveillance operations that were occurring in Trump's incoming team for the first administration. So anyway, but before that, Hannigan, before he left GCHQ in the summer of 2016, even before, of course, well, it was probably clear that Trump could win the election, Hannigan flew to the U.S. to meet with then CIA Director John Brennan. That's according to The Guardian at the time. Curious that he wouldn't have met with his NSA counterpart, given the close relationship between GCHQ and NSA. He did not meet with Mike Rogers, who was the head of NSA and U.S. Cyber Command at the time, but instead meets with the then CIA Director John Brennan. Possibly Mike Rogers wasn't on board with what was to come, which was the manufacturing of the core of the Russiagate, the pillar of it all, which was that Russia had hacked the DNC database, released emails to Julian Assange's WikiLeaks, sank the campaign of Hillary, and got their Russian agent into the White House, Donald Trump. That's how the narrative was spun. Now, as we know from these DNI reports that were put out by Tulsi Gabbard, clearly there were NSA analysts, others within the other intelligence agencies who said that this story of the Russia hack was bogus. There was nothing to it. There was no real effect that the Russian cyber operations had on the elections. Nonetheless, Hannigan, who had earlier met with Brennan was part of this core grouping who, in the first week of December 2016, after the election, before the inauguration, launched the whole, operation around Russiagate. Joined by, it's sometimes been referred to in academic reports that this was called the White House small group out of the DNI director or the director of national intelligence, who was Clapper, and of course working with Brennan and so on. So now I think it's important to also stress that Russiagate wasn't or the DNC hack narrative, which was denied even by the president of CrowdStrike, Sean Henry, who later on, and I think it was 2017, actually under congressional testimony, said they had no evidence of the attack and the cyber attack, and of course they were the ones that initially reported on that. That's a whole other story, but the point is that this narrative of the Russia hack became the basis for the entire censorship industrial complex. The idea that, we had to have partnership between government agencies, FBI and CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, DHS. They sort of took the lead as it came out in congressional investigations into the so-called censorship industrial complex, that they took the lead partnering with Silicon Valley firms, social media companies, internet platform companies and all that to, defend the American democracy and make sure that misinformation, disinformation, malinformation, all of that nonsense did not enter onto the platforms. This was the core of the censorship apparatus. Now, just to make the point on this, FBI and CISA were two of the key interagency partners of what was called the Election Security Group. Now, the Election Security Group was run by the NSA and U.S. Cyber Command. It had previously been known as the Russia Small Group, assumedly been formed in the aftermath of the so-called Russia hack that never was. But the first head of it, from the NSA side of the election security group, the first head was Ann Neuberger, who was joined on the U.S. Cyber Command side by Timothy Hawk. Now, Hawk was just fired as the head of NSA Cyber Command, supposedly because, he's a woke general and Laura Loomer convinced Trump to do that. Anyway, there may be more to that story, but the other side of this kind of cozy relationship between the intelligence agencies and Silicon Valley was also the intelligence agency's relationship to academia. And I want to focus on one of the parts mentioned within the congressional investigation into the censorship industrial complex, which was mentioned briefly in those reports, which is Harvard, and particularly the so-called Belfer Center. And out of that was what was called the Defending Digital Democracy Project. This was founded by Eric Rosenbach. Now, he was known as the Pentagon's cyber czar. He was the former chief of staff to the Secretary of Defense, Ash Carter. He also played a role in establishing U.S. Cyber Command, together with Ann Neuberger, who said she coordinated the team that established U.S. Cyber Command. She's the head of the election security group. But they were joined, Rosenbach, Neuberger were joined by Jen Easterly, former head of CISA, and Nakasone, the former head of NSA Cyber Command. So they were Nakasone and Easterly. They called themselves the Four Horsemen when they established Cybercom in 2010. Anyway, you get a sense of this. But the Defending Digital Democracy project out of Harvard was also Rosenbach, who founded it, worked with Robbie Mook and Matt Rhodes. Those are the campaign advisors for Clinton and Romney. So you get a sense of the political operation. But these were just the various academics, getting together to ensure that our democracy was defended from those dastardly Russians and their disinformation campaigns and so on. One of those academics they worked with was none other than Robert Hannigan. Yes, so he leaves GCHQ, comes to the U.S. to defend our democracy, working with all these cybercom people at the Defending Digital Democracy. So he also worked there with other academics like Chris Krebs, the first director of CISA that was fired, Yasmin Green, the director of Jigsaw, that's Google's geopolitical operation. Green was also the secretary of ADL at one point, maybe still is. And Rick Leggett was also at the Defending Digital Democracy campaign, the Belfer Center operation. Rick Leggett was the former deputy director of the National Security Agency until 2017. It's a name you might recognize in the just released documents because he was one of the participants in this small group operation organized in Obama's office. So the point is, it might be nice to see Obama, Brennan, Comey, all these guys go off to prison. But if you do not go after the British roots of this coup, and if you do not end this special relationship, what you're going to see is the further of flooding the zone as Sir Kim Darroch. You'll see another Kim Darroch in the form of the current Blairite that is in charge, that's the UK ambassador to the United States. There will be another strike on Iran. There will be more weapons flown into Ukraine for the proxy war on behalf of the British. More possible weapons, nuclear weapons, flown to air bases inside of England. And frankly, if Trump does not end this special relationship and go along and continue to go along with British geopolitical operations, he will end up exactly like Barack Obama or the presidencies of Barack Obama and Joe Biden. So the special relationship needs to end once and for all. The British have no other desire than to use us for the geopolitical games determined out of the City of London and the financial oligarchy with their lackeys in Wall Street. And what needs to happen is to collaborate with Russia, with China, with India, along LaRouche's four powers concept, and work with these nations to end the genocide that we see ongoing, to collaborate internationally on economic development, as Helga Zepp-LaRouche has identified the Oasis Plan. That will be our push for the upcoming two-state conference at the UN in approximately 5 days. So join with us in this work and stay tuned to the LaRouche organization.